Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name is Stephen Clark and I'm joined as always by Nick Ponte. How you doing, Nick?
That was a really good start, mate. You almost forgot your name there. So you're going to pronounce this week's guest name. It's going to be your next challenge.
Well, this is what was in my head there when I was thinking about that. Today we're delighted to be joined by Bronwen Vearncombe. Nailed it. And she's someone I've followed for probably a couple of years since I saw her on Mark Stokes' book. Talking about SaaS pensions and how she was used as a case study and how she used pension funds to basically invest and grow her property business very quickly. And I gave her and her husband the freedom for him to kind of complete a big reason why, which was to sail around the world, and she kind of followed him to every port and they started then growing her businesses on the side as well. So they've kind of not ventured back to the UK now. They've kind of created this dream life where they're traveling the world in different places. And she was recording in Zanzibar and kind of just sharing the journey and what property investment could kind of do for you if you systemize it and have the right people, wasn't you?
Yeah, so it's all about this kind of like transition from the corporate world. So she used to work for Lloyd's Bank, and then they left that, like you say, travel was the big thing. And obviously property brought that financial freedom to be able to do that. And we go into like all the systems, how they raised investor, funding for their projects and what sort of portfolio they've got just now. And like you say, Stephen, how she can run that from a laptop pretty much from anywhere in the world, as long as you've got an internet connection. So I absolutely love that. I got a little bit of a taste of it when I was in Florida there for 3 weeks, and how that can kind of work if you've got the right systems in place. So we'll just cut straight to the interview with Bronwen. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome, Bronwen Vearncombe, to the Scottish Property Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, lovely to be here.
And thank you very much for joining us from the beautiful Zanzibar. The setting on behind you looks a lot different from what we're sitting in Scotland anyway.
Yeah, I'm in Tanzania, beautiful island of Zanzibar. Part of the freedom that property gives me. We're not just here on holiday though, we're actually living out here for a while. We're doing a property project. So there we go, we've gone international very recently.
Superb. Let's touch on that as well. But before we kind of get into those details, can you kind of take us back to the start and talk about what you were up to in your life before property became a thing?
Yes, my goodness. So I was a banker in the City of London for a long time. I worked for one organisation for 21 years. And I got to the point where it was like, really, do I really have to carry on doing this commuting? Do I really need to have all this hassle in my life? When I had lots of dreams, lots of things I wanted to do, particularly adventure stuff. So yeah, it was a turning point really when I was told I couldn't take my pension until I was 67. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not working until I'm 60, let alone 67. So how do I create the sort of income I can so that I can do other things? And that's where it started really. It was a catalyst. It was, okay, we've got a little bit of savings. We had lots of Lloyd's Bank shares worth not very much. So sell all of those.
I actually don't invest right in the stock market at all, but the one share purchase that I did do was like back in 2008, I think, with the banking crash and that. And for some reason, I thought this is a good time to buy banking shares because everyth's surely at its lowest point. And I bought Lloyd's Banking Group at like £2 a share, and then it dropped to
50p.
But it went from that was from £7 or £8, and I thought surely this is good, and then it went to 30p.
Yeah, 30p I think was the lowest actually. I think mine were 50 when I sold. Cheapest. I bought some at 10. Yeah, that's the problem with the stock market, you see. Again, property, you've got control over your property. You haven't got control over the stock market. So
tell us about then how did you kind of make that jump then from the corporate world? Because that's quite scary for a lot of people, isn't it? So what went through your head at that time?
It's very scary. So the first thing we did was to think, okay, we've got enough for a deposit on a flat. We bought ex-council flat in Winchester with a little bit of money that we had, and we knew nothing at that point. So then we thought, we'll start learning. So we're still working, start learning with an expert, get some knowledge, understand the risks. And suddenly the whole world opened up to, oh my goodness, I could do this. I could actually create an income. That means I could leave my job. So after a couple of years, I left my job. My husband left his after 12 months of starting out. I carried on because getting mortgages is just a little bit easier when you're working. So I went down part-time for a year, three days a week. And then letting go of that was really hard. I can honestly say it was one of the hardest things, harder than doing a bridging loan.
Just because of the comfort of the income, or just what you've known?
It's psychological, really. It's, oh my goodness, I get this money coming in every month. I know I'm going to get it. And I've always worked, I've always had that salary. So letting go was like, is this really going to work? We were getting income from our properties. We weren't earning as much as we were from our corporate jobs, but we didn't need to. And I think it was the confidence of we don't need to get that every month.
And do you remember giving up any luxuries or anything like that at the time when you sort of did your numbers and you thought, right, well, we're going to like get a better quality lifestyle here, but we're obviously not going to make as much money. So can you remember any specific things that you kind of...
Oh my goodness. Well, it was quite good exercise actually to write down some of the things that you spend your money on when you're in that corporate world, because it all adds up. And it's the lunches, it's the business suits, it's the commuting. My goodness, the thousands and thousands of pounds I spent on train fares, and little things, makeup and all that stuff that us women have to do, shoes. It's really a lot of money. So I thought, well, no, I mean, there were things like improving our house, kitchens, bathrooms. We didn't do any of that while we were learning property, because it was like, why invest in our house when we can buy another one? So we actually lived with pretty shitty house for a while. Did you
find your tenants had better properties than you at some point?
Yes, definitely they did. Yeah, I was buying these magnet kitchens from LNPG, saving a huge amount and going, yeah, look at my kitchen, it was falling apart. The good thing was though, when we first decided to go on an adventure and John sailed around the world, we did our house up then because we were going to let it. So we actually earned money from our home. So that was the only time we actually invested in our own property.
You guys went full time, or certainly John did, very, very quickly. I think you focused heavily on cash flow and bigger cash flow and strategies at the time, right from the off, rather than building up a standard buy-to-let portfolio.
Yeah, we started with that first flat. We still got it, so that worked really well. But then we went into sort of multi-lets, so houses of multiple occupation, because they gave us a really high return on investment. So down here in the south, in Hampshire, where my home is, home. It was quite expensive to buy. So for us, it was trying to find the strategy that was going to give us a good return on our money. And I didn't want to buy anywhere else because I really love the negotiating. I like to talk to agents. I like to find motivated sellers and negotiate. And that's what I needed to do locally. So yeah, Southampton, Portsmouth, Winchester, and Andover is where we ended up.
And you mentioned that the small amount of money you had saved, you put into the first flat. So how did you go about purchasing these HMOs to grow the portfolio significantly at the start?
Yeah, so what we did was leverage our mortgage. So we took further advance on our property. Now, luckily, we'd been there about 10 years, so we'd actually gained quite a lot of equity. So we took money out of our home. Again, that's quite a scary thing, because everybody tells you pay off your mortgage. That was the old-fashioned way of thinking. But we got the cheapest, really good rate on our mortgage, and to do a further advance is one of the cheapest ways to borrow. So we borrowed that money, we put that into deposits on the first few properties. And then after that, we've done a lot of work with other people's money, with investors and pensions, other people's pensions and things. Yeah, so we've been quite innovative with our funding.
Let me just go back to that, remortgaging your house, because that is one that kind of splits the boat. A lot of people are, no, don't do that, it's too risky. Other people, that's a great way. Now, personally, I think it's a great way, especially where we are at the moment in the market, in the UK, Scotland, wherever you are. there's a good chance you'll have a good bit of equity in your house, depending on when you bought it, because the market, prices have been going up in the last year or so, 10%. So for those people who are listening to this thing, where am I going to get the deposit for my first buy to let or my first property? Then that is a perfect source of it, I think. Obviously, you've got to take advice on it and just be careful.
You do, because you've got to be able to afford the repayments. So,
that was my next question. Was you've kind of pulled money out your house, which is going to increase your mortgage payments, and then a year or two later, you're both kind of quitting your corporate career. So that must have kind of went completely against conventional wisdom of that's going to increase our mortgage, increase our monthly expenditure, and then we'll quit our jobs as well.
Yes, and as a banker, I'm quite comfortable with borrowing money, and I'm quite comfortable with mortgages and what they mean. For us, it was okay, it's a risk, but at the end of the day, if we can afford it with our day jobs and we were earning good money, then it's going to work. Whether the property works or not, we'll manage that. And actually that money, if we could get it back through buying good properties, if we needed to again sell those properties, then it could work. So I think there was always that what if in our heads, what if property prices do go up in the long term, and it is our home, we are living there. We had a very big garden, so we knew there'd be some planning opportunity in the garden as well. So I think it's a personal thing. You've got to discuss it with your family. You need to just be secure in your thinking. I talk to a lot of people whose parents go, no, don't do it, and I have to try and show them how the economics works and what the risk is. But some people don't want to do it. So
was your husband fully on board with you, and were you the more driving force in this that way, or was he the driving force, or was it kind of both of you kind of just wanted to do it?
Yeah, we were both really quite enthusiastic once we'd seen what was possible, and we talked to other people who were doing it. We, initially we thought, oh, it won't work in the south. House prices are really expensive. So, when people are talking about Birmingham and further north and even Scotland, its prices are a lot cheaper and things. But once we started to learn and we understood how do the numbers work, and we looked at different strategies, we thought, well, yeah, let's give it a go. And after the first one or two, it was okay, this works. You've got to have the golden rules. You've got to stick to those rules and be really quite rigorous when you're looking to buy. You're not buying for yourself, you're buying for a different purpose. So, some people get distracted, but for us, it was very clear. Both of us were really determined. We set ourselves a goal in that first 12 months. And after that, when John left his job, it was okay, when are we going to do our adventures? And John signed up to do the Clipper round the world yacht race. And so it gave us a deadline, a 2017 deadline, which was 2 years after we started.
Wow. And that was going to give him the kind of time freedom to allow him to do that, and the financial freedom to allow him to not to work, basically, to sail around the world.
Yeah, and I think that's what motivated us, was not the property stuff and getting another deal. It was more around, when can we do these things? And it's a funny old world, because one of our agents managing our property in Portsmouth, we had a meeting with him, and he said, he was off to Airlie Beach in Queensland in Australia. And we went, why are you going there? And he said, my girlfriend's doing a leg of the Clipper around the world and I'm going to meet her. And that was the spark. John's eyes just lit up and he went, I need to talk to her. I'd love to do it. And it wasn't just one leg, we said, well, look, if you can do all of it, why not? So that became our goal for a year later, was to raise £50,000 to actually do it, because that was the cost. And it was, okay, we can do this. Do
you think that's important about as a strong reason why? Because I think when people start out, it's always about the amount of units or the amount of cash flow. And I always kind of feel to myself, probably very much the same as you guys, that unless it's something for yourself or something, a goal or an aspiration or a lifestyle or something you want, I feel like the units or the cash flow just is irrelevant. That it doesn't after a
Yeah.
after a few, it doesn't really make a difference. You're just kind of,
No.
has to be something a bit
No,
strong.
that's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's that reason why, as I call it. You know,
And
whenever I'm talking,
did you start with
yeah.
that end goal? And sorry to interrupt. I'm really interested in this. Did you start Bronwen with that end goal in mind, or did you just get started and then you kind of thought up what the kind of vision and the end goal was later down the line?
Started with that end goal. You know, on the back of my phone, if you look at my phone now, you see these pictures here. This is a place in Namibia. It's called Nankuse. And for me personally, it was, I want to go do wildlife conservation in Africa. So that was my picture I put on my phone in 2014, and it's still there now. For John, it was, I want to do more sailing. So for us, it was, what are we going to do with our time? Of course, we're going to spend more time with the family. Of course, we're going to see more of our parents, you know, all that stuff that everyone talks about. Oh, you know, I'll do the good thing. That doesn't actually motivate you hugely. What does it mean? So for me, it was, I'm going to go to Namibia. I'm going to
Hope they don't
work
listen to the
there.
podcast.
I'm going to volunteer. Yeah, probably. It's in my book, actually, so what they said. So yeah, it was interesting. I think it was a driver for us. As I said, I put it on my phone so that every time I looked at my phone, it was right, yeah, I'm going there. And it's hard, you know, property isn't easy. It is hard.
I'm just trying to get an idea in my head what the time scale was then. So you said 2014. Yeah. So when did you probably start investing?
Yeah, so we did a course in 2014. That year, John, we bought, I think, 3 HMOs, something like that. And John left his job. The second year, we carried on and did a few conversions. So we did some slightly more complex things and some more HMOs. And then the following year was when John got ready to go around the world. So he left in 2017.
And how do things look in your portfolio now then today? Like, you know, like what does it consist of then?
Yeah, so we haven't got that many properties. We've got different businesses. So we've got the residential properties. We have some holiday lets. So the HMOs, we've got 7. We've got 3 holiday lets, a couple of single lets. But we've got a guest house business. So that's actually very different. That was in year 3 after we started. So the year before we went around the world, we established a serviced accommodation business, which was for councils. So council emergency housing. And we fell into that a bit, you know, we were looking at bigger deals, and I had a mentor at the time, and he was saying, right, what are you going to set yourself this year? And it was, okay, I'm going to do £1 million property purchase. I had no money because you run out all the time. And I thought, okay, look at bigger deals, because actually it's easier to negotiate. There's less competition, and let's go commercial. So we just looked at lots of things in Southampton. We were going to convert to flats because we've done a couple of those already. And then when we came across this 26-bed property, it's being used by a charity, we thought, well, while we get planning, what can we use it for to get an income? Because we took partly a bridging loan on that one. So we let the rooms out, and then it was like, okay, I haven't done this before, let's find someone who knows what they're doing. I brought somebody on board that said he could fill the rooms for me because he's got such demands. And it's a long story, very short now, but yeah, we filled it with council emergency housing tenants. And now we have 5 properties that we let to councils, not directly, but they book the rooms. So it's short-term letting. So that as a trading
like homeless
business
people then that are living there, like they come from a homeless background, or?
So no, they get, usually it's some people who, if you take Grenfell, for example, you know, it's a council block. So if a council house or a block of flats needs renovating, or there's a fire, flood, issues like Grenfell, you know, they have to find somewhere for these people to live before they can find them their home again. Okay. So they will come to us, fire, floods, domestic violence, other issues, and you know, we'll provide a sort of shared home for them for a period of time with cooking facilities, and try and make it as comfortable as possible for them before the council then house them more permanently. So it's not street homeless. But now you mention it, we then went on, after a couple of years, we then were approached by one of the councils to provide homeless accommodation as a test, really, because they were offered a grant by their government, so during the winter. So we actually put aside one of our properties for street homeless. And then that's been going really well. And of course, during COVID, we had to provide a lot more space because they were actually taking everybody off the street. So that's been quite a challenging strategy, but has worked really well for us and for our clients, really.
It's a good way of giving back through a property business as well. Like, I really like that. It's not just about maximising the revenue stream and getting the best quality tenants, kind of providing that service where humanity is needed, it really. Yeah. Yes,
it's really interesting because we had to be in the UK to get this off the ground. So it's before we went around the world, and we tried different strategies. But when we talked to councils, we went out, we looked at where these councils were placing people currently, and they were smelly, horrible bed and breakfasts. Families couldn't stay together. They were in different rooms. There wasn't cooking facilities. It was just awful. So I thought, well, we can do better than that. So for us, it was we had this property, very large rooms. We did it up to a certain point, but not too nice. If the council don't want us to provide palaces for these people, but we do want it to be homely. So we've got rooms for families of up to 6 people, which is brilliant. They can cook, they can stay together, and it's near the centre of Southampton. So it's actually quite convenient for them as well.
Yeah, were these like commercial properties then that were kind of converted into this purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, so the first one was owned by a charity. So we bought it from the charity. That was they didn't have their license renewed or something. But after that, when we found we were full all the time, within 9 months, we were very clear that we needed to expand. We had more councils come and use us because once one council recommends us, then all the other councils go, great, because they've always got a backlog. They've always got issues. They need to place people. So we then found a bed and breakfast. We did a purchase lease option on the owner of that. And then we've done a couple of others where we've got long leases with the owners. So one of the properties was empty. So, perfect strategy to actually give somebody an income, but actually not to have to spend a huge amount buying these properties. So that gives us a good return. Yeah.
No, superb.
It's a great strategy.
I was going to say to you, a lot of people out there, selling the dream. You look like you're living the dream there. So how do you manage things then with your property business, being on the other side of the world? When you've got all these properties back in England,
yeah.
How do you manage it all?
Yeah, we were very clear right from the start because of our vision of what we wanted to be doing. We didn't want to create another job, so we didn't want to manage our properties day in, day out. And we've never managed any of them, not even the first one. So for us, it was how do we make sure that we've got really good people who can manage the properties on our behalf, but actually pay them quite well for it so that they do a good job. I don't use high street agents. I tend to use other investors who have established themselves as managing their own portfolios and maybe 1 or 2 others. So it's not, these are people I know and trust.
Why do you do that? Is it because they just know the business? They know that what you do better, or
they know the client, they know what the clients need, they know tenants ace, they know how to put really good contracts together. I think with HMOs, you've really got to know how to manage them properly because it's very, very easy. You upset 1 or 2 people and that's it. You lose the whole household. So for me, it was HMOs, having somebody that really knows how to communicate with people regularly, to look after people and to make sure that we keep our occupancy levels high. It wasn't immediate, I've tried other people. It took a while to go, that's not really working. Mm-hmm. And networking in property investing is so important. And it was really through networking with people and understanding and finding out what other people do and going along and seeing what they do. So that's generally how I've built relationships with people who I then can say to them, well, look, do you think you could manage mine like this? And they'll say, well, I could, let me have a think about it. So those have come over time. But yeah, before we went around the world, it was, are we confident that if we're not physically in the UK, that we can still have these conversations, we can use Zoom, we can still be able to get that income coming in. And, it was a test. I could have flown home anytime. So John sailed around the world. I actually followed him. So a lot of that's in my book around, that was a test really.
What was the longest time you were away, for? Because a lot of people kind of might think, oh, that sounds good, but then it's quite a kind of mental thing where you're leaving everything and you're like, oh, what if something emergency happens? Do I need to be there? So what was the longest time you were away?
Well, in the end, it was 12 months when John did the round the world. So, I said, I didn't even tell my kids, to be honest, that I wasn't coming back during that time. Hence the quotes in the book. It's very funny because they just thought we were completely crazy.
What age were your kids?
So Robert was at university, was in his final year. Laura was at college, so she just finished college actually. So she didn't want to go to uni. She went to Madrid. So what we said to them before we left was, what are you going to do this year? We're going to have this fun, but I want you guys to also go and do something. We'll pay for it.
Right.
So Robert traveled after his degree. He did Everest Base Camp, raised money to put in a water pipe in Nepal with a friend. So that was amazing. So we met up. What we said to both of them was, whatever you want to do within reason, we'll support you. But wherever you are in the world, we'll meet up at Christmas in Sydney, which is where the boats were going to be. And that's what we did. It was fantastic. We had Christmas in Sydney in 2017. And Laura flew from Tenerife and Robert was in Fiji. So we all got together. So to answer your question, 12 months away, but not without communicating, of course. So we had at that point weekly meetings with our managers of our guest houses. We had regular meetings with our agents. And I did one more deal that John didn't know about because he'd left earlier. I had a couple of months and I actually found another purchase lease option during that time. And he said to me, no more deals, we haven't got time. But I did that because it was just an opportunity I couldn't say no to. So I was still negotiating that during using Zoom and things. So it doesn't stop you. It's just time zones and technology. So, I've got a MacBook Pro. I've got really good technology, good Wi-Fi here.
So having the right people on the ground, and then obviously the technology with the communication side of things is just really working for you then.
Yeah, and what's the worst thing that can happen? I hop on a plane and I come home. So it's always the way that we've thought. What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, I could go home. John could as well. He could have given up the race, as half the people do, for different reasons. But I was pretty determined that he was going to circumnavigate because not many people do that in their lives. And I wanted him to look back and say, wow, he's achieved it. So I was more determined than he was.
And what did it look like after you kind of achieved that big why? Did you feel a bit flat? Like it was, you've kind of conquered that mountain. What's next? Or you've had in Zanzibar now,
It was a huge thing to do. We got a lot of PR, there was a lot of media attention, especially when we got back. It was, wow, we were on the local radio and it was like, what next? And people asked us that, well, what are you going to do next? You've done this. And we're like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not sure. For me, while we were going around the world, I did some volunteering. So for me, I'd done some sort of, let's test out the waters. I went to Namibia, I did that volunteering, but I could only do it for 2 weeks because of the schedule. So I said, and John wanted to do it. So we said, we'll do Namibia. We'll go there, but not just for 2 weeks, we'll do it for several months. And we'll do it together. And we'll see if that's something that actually we'd like to spend more time doing in wildlife. And then it was, well, where else in the world do we want to go and spend time? So because John's clipper thing was just, port to port, he'd only have maybe tops 2 weeks in any one place. So we sort of reflected on the places that we've been and said, well, where would we like to go back to? And for us, it was Australia. It was northeast Australia, Queensland. Let's go base ourselves there and have a think. So we don't need to stay in the UK. Our house is rented. It was doing really well. We earned more from our house than the cost of our accommodation traveling. So we knew that if we go and stay in another country, and maybe we take some stock. And that's when I wrote my book. So we house sat in Queensland. So for no cost, we actually sat in someone else's house, looked after it for them while they were away. And that's when I wrote my book. And we decided then that, you know, we had some other ambitions. We were still growing our business, our portfolio, of course, still managing that. But I was actually teaching other people to do property at that point. So for me, it was, I love this stuff. I love helping other people learn. I was coaching people as I was going around the world on Zoom, and Zoom was a new thing in those days. And I thought, I like this. And so I don't do it full time. I do it 2 days a week. And that was something that motivates me. And for John, it was, you know, where do we base ourselves across the world? What else could we do that's going to give back and support? So we spent time in Namibia last year, October 2021, after lockdown 1. We escaped to Namibia. And
lockdown with the animals.
Oh my goodness, you should see my pictures.
Yeah.
So there were no volunteers in Namibia, very, very few volunteers because of COVID. So whilst we got out to Namibia, very few tourists or young people could actually go out because lockdown 2 happened and then lockdown 3. So we ended up spending 6 months volunteering for this organization in Namibia. And we did amazing things, from ear notching rhinos out in the fields, you know, identifying rhinoceros and actually doing health checks on them, leopards, lions, cheetah, amazing stuff we did with the vets, because they didn't have any vet students. So we had the time of our lives. We even built houses there for the San Bushmen. I'm talking about tin houses, but you know, it was hard graft, but hugely rewarding.
Cool.
I could write another book about that.
Sorry, what was your book? Tell the listeners about your book that you wrote when you were doing that travel.
This is my book, Building Your Dream Life.
That's a good title for the podcast. We'll just steal that.
It is, isn't it? There we go. Steal it with pleasure. Building Your Dream Life, because people said to me, you know, I was teaching people and showing them how, and I've got an online program, and everybody kept saying to me, you know, when you present, you're so enthusiastic, you know, you should write a book. And I'm like, oh, when have I got time to write a book? And I wasn't really that motivated. But when we went to Australia, that's when I thought, right, I'm going to get a book coach. It's going to cost me some money, but I'm actually going to get this done because I'm going to be in one place for a change. And, you know, it's beautiful in Queensland. You know, it was lovely weather. I could sit out, write my book, take my time over it. So that's what I did, yeah. And that tells a story really, from starting out with that vision to actually going around the world. And it's got all my case studies, 15 case studies of things that worked, things didn't work, a lot of problems, how we overcame those problems. So yeah, it's doing really well on Amazon, actually. It's Amazon Audible as well.
That's great. We'll put a link in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us quickly about, you know, like achieving kind of happiness through like property and that, you know, because obviously you described how back when the corporate role and that, you know, you were, you know, unfulfilled, not enjoying it and all the rest of it. Can you just describe the contrast between your life then and your life now? And do you feel happy and content? And, you know, do you feel like you still need to do more, or can you just...
Well, it's a great question because it comes in different stages. I think, first of all, it's that fear of leaving that corporate job, that structure and that pay packet every month. You know, that didn't take me too long to get over that. After the first couple of months, I'm like, okay, it's working. But you need time in property. So leaving the day job is that first thing. And then it's actually working with your spouse. So for me, you know, John and I working together, we've never done that before. So from a life partner, husband, to actually a business partner, oh, that's tricky, really difficult.
Yeah.
You know, so learning about that, learning that we've got different wealth dynamics, that's in my book as well. We talk about how different people we are and how working together can actually work really well as long as you understand your differences. So that was a bit of, oh, is this going to work? Do we have a life outside our businesses? Because that's also really important, because we found we would just work. Oh shit, I'm tired. You know, do we have a life? So going on holiday, having a break, realizing that actually there's another reason why we're doing this. So it's those first few years of grind, but also keeping that vision in your mind. And then the happiness comes from fulfilling those things that you always wanted to do, which is that the dreams, and realizing that it's actually not that difficult. A lot of the fear in life is those false expectations that appear real, that you think, oh my goodness, but what if? So what I find now is that I inspire people because I'm going, well, actually, this is how we overcame that problem. This is what we did about visas. This is what we did when we found ourselves in Namibia and couldn't get home. We shipped our car out. We're like, oh, hey, you can do that. We shipped our car out, put a tent on the top of it, and went traveling. And people go, oh, isn't that dangerous? So what you find is your comfort zone changes. So as you start to do stuff and you go, oh, okay, that was okay. That wasn't too difficult. Then you move on and you go, well, okay, I can take it to the next stage. But, there are times when we look at each other and go, oh my goodness, got a few problems. So let me tell you about one of the problems during COVID, because I think this is useful for listeners. Not everything goes according to plan, does it? So we built these houses. We did a development with a builder in Andover. He built 8 houses at cost. We were doing it as a joint venture. Those houses are really high-end, 4-bed properties. We got the show home open and furnished ready by March 2020. What happened in March 2020? Oh dear, no one can come and view them. So no, the estate agents all sort of disappeared, stopped working. Resource was limited. People weren't viewing properties. So, we had to pay additional amounts to our development finance for all the time until we'd sold the first 5 properties to pay off that loan. And that amounted to nearly £300,000. So let me tell you about that one. Additional costs. Oof. This is just interest and fees, of course, because banks, we hate them, don't we? Banks can do that. And each quarter they'd renew the facility and we may have sold one property or whatever, so we reduced it gradually. But no, they chuck in another big fee and you just think, crikey, do you really need to do this? So, so how did we overcome that? We had contingency. We're still, we sold them all now. We paid all our investors back in a year ago now, which was great. So we had investor finance and we had the development finance. So the investors did really well because they had additional interest during this period. We didn't make any money at all from that development. However, we are, we've got phase 2 at some point, we all do. But we had contingency, and that's the thing about property investing, especially if you're doing developments or flipping and things like that. You've got to have contingency for things that happen that you don't expect. So there we go. So yeah, that cost us a lot of money. And did we survive? Yes, thankfully we survived. We're still dealing with the snagging issues in the properties, but they are lovely properties, and we've done it. But these things do happen. So, yeah.
And these private investors, were these people in your network that you raised the funding from, or did you go externally?
Yeah, these are people that have been investing with us. Some have been investing with us in previous years. So they were quite happy to lend to us for a development type of investment. Others are new investors that came to us that said, well, we'd be happy to lend you money. We went out with an investor pack to a few people, and then if they knew other people, they would come and lend. So, you've got to be very careful with investors. It's got to be the right sort of project for them. But some of these investors, had done some stuff with us in development before, conversions, that sort of thing. So they knew us well.
It's very interesting because you kind of said that the full risk is with you as a developer. The banks still get their blood, sweat, and tears. The investor still gets their interest, and even more interest if you take longer. So everyone wins except from you. And I suppose the risk and reward thing for developments is a lot greater than HMOs or single buy-to-lets.
Yes, I'm very careful now when I'm advising people in terms of funding, because good investors, personal investors, can be very, very flexible. So, but you've got to make sure that it suits them and that they're not necessarily going to want their money back quickly. We had one of our investors need their money back for a car purchase, I think it was. But we said, if you give us a few months notice, we'll replace your investment with another person. And, you know, we've always been able to do that. But yeah, you've also got to make sure that if it's a complex thing, if it's a joint venture, you know, you need to have sophisticated investors. So there's lots of rules and regulations when you're working with private individuals. And then there's things like crowdfunding. So I would certainly try and avoid the banks now for development. I would prefer to use crowd property or similar type of crowdfunding, because these are property people who I know understand investing, who would be much more flexible when something like COVID hits. I'm not saying, you know, they wouldn't charge us, but, you know, I would feel much more comfortable having conversations with them than a faceless bank that just lent on a development basis. Yeah.
And slap you with ridiculous fees that you've got no way of turning down and getting out of.
Yes, well, having been a banker, I suppose I understand it from their point of view. But even now, we're refinancing some of our guest houses, and you know, it's taking forever because bankers don't always understand this business. They don't understand, you know, the way that we do what we do. You know, they have their very set rules and regulations. So I have to sometimes pull rank and say, look, you know, I understand how banks work, you know, stop fobbing me off. And they just, you know, they've got to have this EBITDA and everything. So you have to play the game, but you also have to understand on the inside that just, you know, let's be sensible, common sense. So yeah, it can be quite hard. You know, it's probably most of our life now is around the refinancing stuff and the business side of it. That is a bit frustrating.
Before we kind of finish up, can you tell us a little bit what you've been combining your travels with your actual property business? Because I'm in Zanzibar at the moment. You're doing a development out there.
Yeah. Yes, we are. So as we were traveling the world, we were always sort of eyes out, just as you are as an investor. You go, oh, what's property look like here? What's the economy doing? You know, we don't, you know, quite like Hampshire, but we don't want to spend the winter months necessarily there. So we're always thinking, well, where would we like to live in the future? And so, yeah, we've traveled around, and especially in Africa, when we were in Namibia, we looked at the coastal area there. And as we were traveling through Botswana and Zambia and Tanzania, and we ended up in Zanzibar because of the temperature of the weather. It's beautiful. It's always warm. And we just fell in love with it, basically. We had a lot of work to do. We stayed in one place for a couple of months, and we just thought, this is lovely. We just love it. So we did our due diligence, as you do, and checked out what we could and couldn't do. Found people who are building properties, who are Europeans, who've been building out here to European standards, and we're doing a joint venture with them. So we're actually we've bought some land. They're going to be doing the builds. Someone else is doing the selling. So we're actually creating 9 apartments out here. Sea view on the East Coast, absolutely glorious place. And we're hoping to sell them in advance, so in advance of building.
Is your target market possibly British?
Expats,
second homes,
holiday homes. Yeah, it's really taking off here in Zambia. It's in Zanzibar. It's quite late to the holiday market, but it's quite upmarket for honeymooners and that sort of thing. So if somebody can buy maybe an apartment that's just that little bit cheaper than the massive houses that you get here, and the economy's good, the government are paying now investors, allowing them to invest here, but also giving them the right to stay in terms of visas. So we've got a work permit, and we can get residential visa in the future. And that's a massive thing, because when we were looking elsewhere, as a British person, can you actually live there more than 3 months as a tourist? You know, the answers, it varies hugely. So out here, they're making it easier now.
How do you get out there? Is it 2 flights, or can you get a direct from London?
Currently it's 2. Yeah, currently it's via Ethiopia or Dubai. Dubai do direct flights here. Right. And before COVID, London, they were going to do London direct flights to Zanzibar. But it's taking off, honestly. It's just going to become quite built up over time. But at the moment, it's unspoilt. It's just beautiful.
Let's hope you're getting in at a good point then, and we look forward to following that as well. That's it.
Watching me on social media.
So listen, we really appreciate your time. It's been great. It's been a great insight. I actually kind of see quite a lot of similarities to myself, because I'm really, really keen on traveling. Like, used to do a lot of traveling back before I had kids. And then obviously now it's kind of like not stopped, but you change the places that you go to kind of accommodate the kids. And then it sounds like you've kind of taken off again after the kids kind of go to university. Then you're going back to all the exciting places again, you know?
Yeah, that's right. You know, and I think having the choice, that's what it's about. That's what property investing is about. You know, you earn your money whether you're in the UK or not. And yeah, freedom also depends on your family circumstances, but just knowing that it's possible, and you know, even being inspired to do something a little bit different, that's what I love to do. So if you want to learn a bit more, connect with me. If you want to have a chat with me, connect with me, read my book.
Excellent, Bronwen. We'll put all these links in the show notes. We'll put the links to your social media and to your book as well. Brilliant. Again, thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. It's really good. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks, Bronwen. All the best.
Okay, take care. Cheers.
Guys, hope you enjoyed that interview. Thanks very much to Bronwen for sharing that. And also interesting at the end how she shared a few bumps along the way. It's not all rosy, the laptop lifestyle, you know, living on a beach and all that. There is some difficulties and challenges in there along the way. So, Stephen, 2nd of February, what is happening?
Whoa, we are back with the Scottish Property Podcast live networking events throughout the whole of Scotland. We've got Glasgow, which always sells out within a day as soon as you put the tickets up. I don't know how Nick Ponty does it. I think he's become a celebrity in Glasgow. Edinburgh event hosted by Gary Wills and Linda Martin, which we attended last month. We've got Aberdeen with myself and the girls from the Property Duo. And we've got Dundee with Keza Salimi and Paul Cummins. So we've got a great lineup of hosts and guest speakers. So if you're interested in coming along in person, chatting to us, the other hosts or the guest speakers, or just learning and networking with like-minded people, then check out the events on Eventbrite and you can book your tickets on there.
Fantastic. Well said. And see you again next week, guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening.